So let's pray for our afternoon. Father, thank you for this morning, Lord. Help us to just continue to grow into the men and women that you want us to be. Help us to learn what you want us to learn and to apply what you want us to apply so we can fulfill your purposes for our lives. So, Lord, we commit this afternoon to you in Jesus' name. Amen. So, point number one. This is the most important one. People need to give. We need to ask often. Yeah, you'll notice in your notes that there's some extra content in there before I move on to principles.
Yes.
There's the treasure principle. This is a great, very simple book written by Randy Alcorn that I would highly recommend. The treasure principle. So these are just some principles out of that book. And then the next 4 pages are actually in reverse order. This is stuff that Ron Fry gave me, that he has taught this same course with Tim in the past. So you look back, it starts with a header that says generosity in the Bible. Mm-hmm. So this is, yeah, I wish these pages were numbered, but we had my initial outline, and then we had the outline on life that is truly life, and these are the appendices to that. So generosity in the Bible, different themes of generosity through each book of the Bible, and then generous people of the Bible, starting with Abraham, and then lessons from Scripture about fundraising and some scriptural references there. So those are just for you to take, to meditate on, and to enjoy. And so now we're going to be moving to this outline here, Principles of Development Success. So it's kind of towards a little bit more closer to the front of the book.
It's numbered as page 1.
Yeah, the numbers are not right. I mean, the book isn't completely numbered, so it's hard to find. Mike, yeah, you might want to help Benjamin find that. All right, so people need to give. We need to ask often. I've already pounded on people need to give a lot today, okay? We're not going to go any more on that, but we need to ask often. The number one reason why people give is because they were asked to give. And the chances are you are probably not asking people enough to support your ministry. Asking can be a method of deepening relationship with people, because by asking you're going to learn things. So people need to give. They want their gift to be received. We need to be asking them to give often. That unlocks joy. B. People give to people justified by the cause. I've already hit you with that one today. So then the point would be to focus on relationships. I think the point that was made earlier about, who do you make the check out to? Mm-hmm. I think you want to be as personal as possible. So focus more on you and the calling on your life. I would keep, if I was going to weight it, I would keep more emphasis on the personal than on the organization or the institution.
John?
Yes.
So, you mentioned cause, but you do seem to emphasize relationship, but what about the mission and the purpose and what we're giving our life to?
Yep.
And this,
well,
why we're going to
that's,
X, Y, Z or whatever.
Yeah, that's who you are. The call. I don't.
You are.
You're integrated. Yeah, So that's going to come out, and when we're building relationships with people we don't know, one of the things I like to ask and share is to hear people's personal testimonies. You know, so as
So
I'm,
we get to know them.
yeah, so as we're getting acquainted, we're getting to hear how God's been at work in their life, and then you're going to get an opportunity
Right.
to share your story on how God called you to be a believer, and then how God called you to this calling in evangelism. So that's definitely going to come out, you know. But it's like I think one of the main things that inspires people is people that are passionate about a calling that they also resonate with. So we need to get to that place where but without people and relationships, we're talking to ourselves. There is no money without relationships. So people give to people. Focus on relationships. When Karen left Campus Crusade for Christ, and we got married, and she became working kind of, or partnering with my ministry at Bible Literature International. Where do you think the money, what happened to the money?
Followed her.
It followed her. People give to people. Justified by the cause. They went with Karen because they liked Karen, they believed in Karen. The cause didn't change dramatically. Really. It was still about reaching people for Jesus. This was through literature. Her other means was through music. So that money, not all of it came our way because she wasn't in that supported staff role, but there were people that supported Karen at Crusade that also supported my work at Bible Literature International. So number C, people give primarily for emotional reasons, but they justify their giving with logic. So the application would be use language that appeals to emotion. I have seen people use logic to kind of get out of giving, they kind of rationalize themselves out of giving. But I would say primarily it is an emotional response. And so a lot of fundraising, I would say, is transferring emotion. Our emotion being transferred to others. I mean, that's like Reed's life story.
Yeah.
I mean, Reed embodies emotion, passion for the lost, and when he gets next to people, that passion and emotion and excitement for the lost gets put across. But we need to not be afraid to use emotion in our communication. So stories beat facts. I mean, it's not necessarily either or when we're communicating our ministry. It's both and. But if I only had one thing I could share with someone, I would share a story of a changed life rather than a bunch of statistics about a changed life. Because giving is mostly emotional. There was a guy that owned a company that was the largest maker of kitchen cabinets in the United States. Orville Marilat. Marilat kitchen cabinets. Adrian, Michigan. I used to be in Ohio, so he got on our radar and we went to call on Mr. Marilat. And we sat down with him in his living room. I was with another colleague of mine. And we said, hey, Mr. Marilat, how do you decide where to give? And he kind of sat back and he said, gut feel. And I think a lot of it for many donors is like a gut feel, like the Luis Palau ministry. There's a picture, and I've got zillions of them. In fact, can you go into our room and in the in that bag is a bunch of literature. Just bring, I think the ministry strategy piece is on
In the
top. There's a
suitcase.
folder, yeah, bring those in. But some of you might even be able to answer this, like if there was like one iconic image that encapsulates the Luis Palau Association, what is it? You got any ideas?
Louis preaching in Colombia.
Well, it's this. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's usually the backside of an evangelist.
That's usually
It's the backside of the evangelist
Right.
and a
Crowd.
massive crowd of people with their faces.
He uses that a lot.
And, you know, like people would say, like, what is the brand? You know, like a lot of people want to get into branding and things. And I'm not really,
Speaking to crowds.
I don't spend a lot of time on that, but I would say that photo, that's the brand of Luis Palau. And a lot of people would simply look at that picture and after getting acquainted with the person would say, God's hand is on that guy. And he's faithful to share the good news in the power of the Holy Spirit, and a lot of people are getting saved. That's all they need to know.
Yep.
So,
But excuse me, sir.
yes.
I think some people misuse that this principle, especially in Africa, using exaggeration, using lies. What's not on ground, especially when it comes to bringing out the poverty in Africa, they will really misrepresent that.
Yeah.
So I really guess much as we need to use a language, we need to be genuine. We need to have good intentions behind it.
Amen. Yeah. Yeah, and we're not going to solve the misrepresentation of it. We can just commit that everybody in this room is going to honor God
Amen.
with what we say. And that's the stats and the photos. It all has to be real. You know, my friend, well, I've got copies for everybody of that, so I'm going to send everybody home with that because that's a good little piece. It's a good model for you to look at. But the formula is E minus I equals 0. Everything minus integrity equals nothing. Tell the truth. Okay? And so these principles all have to be done in the context of telling the truth. And, you know, we've really dialed back the numbers that we quote. And in our early days when we were doing the festivals and things, some crazy numbers got adopted as truth. One of the most crazy ones was 300,000 people were on the beach in Fort Lauderdale when we did our beach fest. And we just all kind of saluted the flag or whatever. You know, a lot of times that number would be provided by a local, like, you know, police officer or somebody, you know, has no real clue or how many people were there. Well, the last time we had at an event here, they said we had 200,000, and this one's bigger than that, so this must be 300,000. And then we kind of take that number and we start promoting it as gospel. And once they did the Million Man March in D.C., which was very controversial, most public authorities stopped giving any number because they didn't want to get raked over the coals like publicly about it. So then it became incumbent on us to do it. And we would never say 300,000 people were on the beach in Fort Lauderdale now. It is interesting, though, how numbers do stick in the heads of people. I mean, I had a donor, introduce Andrew or something at an event or whatever, and he stood up at the mic and he said, when we did our festival in South Florida, we had 300,000 people on the beach, and we're all kind of looking at each other going, ugh. So
Yeah.
be careful, you know, and this is where evangelists have been criticized big time for using these crazy numbers. And let's err on the more conservative side. And it's good if there's like some like empirical basis for these numbers that we're quoting. So, but use language that appeals to emotion. D, people like to give what they are expected to give. Ask people to consider giving specific amounts. I'm gonna find something in here. I'm not gonna ask you to try to find it, but trust me, it's in your book. So one way that you can ask people to consider giving specific amounts for, well, first of all, how do you know how much to ask someone? Were you the one that was kind of asking about that? Like, how do you know how much to ask someone for? How do you know?
You have a budget daily.
Okay, but my budget might have no reference to like their ability to give. It's very hard to know this, like for sure. Here's some things that can help you. Number one, how much have they given to you in the past? If they're a previous donor, then you have a history of what they've given previously. That can be a guide. Sometimes donors in this country give publicly. You know, there'll be something in the paper about a gift, or some, especially like universities and institutions and hospitals, will have the giving honor roll.
Yeah.
They publish the list of their donors and the amounts.
Yeah.
That's crazy stuff. But it was for a fundraiser, man. Like when I went to the Museum of the Bible this weekend, I was like, honey, you go look at exhibits. I'm studying this wall. Oh yeah, I know that guy, I know this guy, I know this guy, I know this one. And it's like, and that's called development eyes. And, to really go places with this, we have to have development eyes. As we're experiencing life and the world, we're kind of thinking about relationships and fundraising. And you read about somebody that did something in the sector that you work in, you might want to make a personal note of that and start researching that and figure it out. So development eyes is very important. But this was just a page out of a little prospectus we did. We updated our building in Portland about 2 years ago. And so this was terrible on my part. It doesn't add up the total price tag, but it was $500,000 was this project, okay? And so one of the ways that you can give your donor some context and some different levels that they could consider giving is just break it down into categories. So I have one gift at $100,000, 2 gifts at 50, 3 at 25, and then it has a little bracket that says leadership. Then there's 4 gifts at 15, 6 at 10, and there's a little bracket that says major. And then 8 at 5,000, 10 at 2,500, 20 at 1,000, and many at various levels, and that says key. This is not, you could do this on any project. You could do it on a $50,000 project. You could do it on a $5,000 project. You would just adjust the amounts down, okay? And
You
so,
do it by percentage of what you're asking?
yeah, but
Following
it'd
that
be,
grid?
yeah, that would be a way to do it, plus or minus. I mean, I like to use round numbers. I would not ask for some $1,220, I would just do natural rounding. And this is not from God, okay? This is just one way to break down how a project like this might get accomplished. And then what you would do when you were presenting the project to someone, watch, I'm going to ask for money right now. I'm going to ask you for at least $25,000 right now. Would you be willing to consider a gift at this level?
No.
That's all right.
That's the old used car salesman thing, right? That's what comes to my mind, pushing the price forward.
Well,
Will you pay
all,
this much?
all I'm doing is, I wouldn't ask them for that unless I thought they were capable of that.
But I'm asking, is that what you do? You point to the thing?
This is a prospectus, yeah.
Okay.
Unless you wanted to say out of your mouth, that's a little scarier, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all scary to me,
Yeah.
so.
But this is less scary.
Okay.
We were hoping you might consider being one of those, our leadership level donors.
And that's why you label them? Is that part of
Yeah.
why you label them?
Mhm.
Oh.
So right
good.
there, you've asked them for at least 25 up to $100,000.
And I would just add on this, John, so as you're relationship driven, right, the people that you're sitting down with, one of the great things you do is you prep them for an ask. Like, here's what we're doing, so we're going to Madrid, Spain, and I want to sit down with you and talk to you about how you can help us reach Madrid, Spain for Jesus. And then you would sit down, and then, so they're prepared, they're sitting down with you, and then you show them this, and you've done your homework, past gifts, like John said, or a lot of times you can do just research, look at someone's 990, a lot of things are public, or you know other ministries that they've supported, so you get the ballpark, and you come down and just say, hey, this is what we'd love for you to do.
How do you look at somebody's 990?
That's all public records.
Well, they won't have a 990, but maybe an organization.
If they are
Yes.
part of a foundation,
Yes.
you know, then those records are public. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if it's a relatively uncommon name, you could Google their name in that state, for example, and you could even put giving and see if anything comes up. That's sometimes where these donor level publications, I've found donors in that many times, you know, where it's like Seattle Pacific University will publish its annual report online, and so I'll put down Philip Eaton giving, and you might show up in this Seattle Pacific annual report, and you go to the page, and there it says like he gave $10,000 to Seattle Pacific. But I'll just keep going with this idea. So let's say I said I was hoping you might consider being a leadership level donor. What could happen? Well, you could say no.
They could just drop down.
They could easily drop down. They could say, you know what, we're not really in a position to do that right now, but I think we could help out down here. It shows them, it gives them some options. There have been people that have said, you know, we're hoping you might be able to consider something as a major, you know, in the major gift category, and I've had people say, well, do you have these gifts yet? That can happen. They can also just say, you know, whatever you're sharing with me isn't my cup of tea, you know. Usually they frequently would say, I'll pray about it, and then kind of kiss you off later, you know, somehow. But people like to know what they're expected to do. We had a gentleman who helped us. We just had a festival in Grand Rapids, Michigan last year. And there was a businessman there who's known us for many years who kind of helped recruit the fundraising co-chairs. And this guy that he recruited, he knew had sold a company for a lot of money. Might have been like $80 million, or might have been more than that. And so this guy that kind of was an instigator that kind of brought us in, recruited this guy, was hosting a fundraising event at his house. And this guy that he recruited was supposed to do the appeal. And this guy said, yeah, I'm not that excited about, I mean, I'm somewhat excited, but I'm only, you know, we're only kind of planning to give, or I'm only giving $10,000 to this. And he gave some sort of lame excuses for it, and this guy kind of said no. And it was like, man, I was so impressed because I was on a conference call, so this is all happening. I'm just kind of sitting back going, go for it, man. You know, and he kind of laid out some really strong reasons why this was worthy. And in 24 hours, when the guy came to the event, said, we're going to give 50. And that gave him a lot more authority then to challenge others to give significantly. But it was this other guy that kind of let him know that, you know, the 10 that you're telling me that you're going to give isn't really what we were expecting. We were expecting more. And he rose to the occasion when he understood that.
At the conferences with Bishop Jakes, that's a very common thing where they have this conference overhead. And so they'll say, I need 10 people that are willing to give $10,000. And daggone, do they not get 20 or 30 people?
Yeah.
That are, I mean, every single time.
And do they have those people identify themselves like
They
right
walk
then?
up to the front.
Yeah, yeah. So
They
I've
walk
seen
up to
that.
the front.
Yeah.
It was I was at Tampa just a couple months ago, 10,000 pastors and bishops. And really in the first giving, when they did that, it was a 3-day conference. The expenses were paid.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
In
it
the
was
first giving, because they had others, right?
Well, yeah, because every day that you have,
Yeah.
you know, it's like you pray and you do offering, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Right. They
but
give lots of opportunities and they ask often.
and there's always a full amount of people that will give, and it's amazing. They don't look like they have that kind of money to give. Almost never. And that altar is always full,
Isn't
no
that
matter
something?
how much he asks for, or somebody, and it's not usually him, it's another
Right.
pastor comes. And I'm always amazed.
Yeah, that's cool. So people like to give what they're expected to give, so ask people to give specific amounts, and a table of gifts like this can give a little context, and it makes it easier to ask for specific amounts when you've got sort of a range like this that you can put in front of people. Mike?
Maybe you're gonna deal with this a little later, but I wanna focus on the word ask. So, I did some recent research before, after I'd sent you the email, as I did a, I don't know, hour or so conversation with our team about asking. And one of the statistics that was quoted was 80% of people will give if they are asked. And so whoever asks first gets the gift. And, you know, some of my brothers here, as well as, you know, just people we interact with, they come from a pastoral background. So they're not used to it.
Yeah.
And it's a big hurdle to get to the point of saying, would you consider a gift of? And then I guess the follow-up with that is, do you ask for a decision then and there? Or do you say, I think Karen said this, he set an appointment to call back.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always heard beyond 3 days, your chances of a gift go way down.
Yeah.
Because they forget about it, they get
Oh, yeah.
busy.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if you're gonna talk more about that. Just
Yeah,
the-
but I can
that
talk
boldness of
about
asking.
it. You know, the notes are just a guideline here. But yeah, I mean, there's some of you greeted me with, "Hey, we need a USC flag here," because that's where I went to college, undergraduate, University of Southern
That
California.
will never be me.
In Los
Or
Angeles.
Tim.
And there is a very significant, like biomedical engineering division and building at USC. And it was funded by a guy that went to UCLA. Why did he give $100 million to USC? Because the president of USC went over and asked him to do it.
Oh. UCLA didn't send any Christmas cards out here. Yeah.
There's a great story of a woman, an elderly woman, in a man's church, and this pastor, you know, really invested in a relationship with this woman. And when she got older, you know, he continued to be a faithful friend. And when she was in the hospital, he was there, you know, at her side a lot. And he had a sense that the church was gonna be remembered significantly, you know, through this woman's estate. I'm not sure if she had any children. And she passed away, and they did the will, and her entire estate went to a Bible college that was in the region. And the attorney who knew the story, the pastor said, "Why did that happen? You know, I cared for this woman. I loved on this woman." The Bible college guy went in there and he asked for the estate. He got it because he asked. Asking. Okay.
Oh, man.
Let's keep going. People who participate in a ministry will give more to that ministry. Look for ways to involve people. Another item I put in your packet is just a list of possible, what I call cultivation moves that we came up with at Palau from years ago. Ways to engage people. We just had a festival in Eugene, Oregon, not the Bible Belt. And it was in the baseball stadium at the University of Oregon in July of last summer. And we had a fair number of people that came from, you know, Portland and some from out of town to attend that festival. We always try to bring donors to our ministry because they get to see the ministry up close and they get to participate in the ministry. And so one of the things that we do is we do a very fast counselor training refresher or session, and we give them the t-shirts and they put on the t-shirts and we put them to work counseling. And in Eugene, as in many settings, it's very difficult to get counselors into the very front part of where the stage is, because that tends to be where the young people kind of push them. They want to get right up front, and it's hard to get the counselors in there. And so we brought a bunch of our major donors and board members in between the steel barricade and the stage itself, and so we could slide in there. And it was just beautiful for me to look and to see a whole bunch of some of our best donors that were being used by God to help pray with people who are making decisions for Jesus. That's pretty cool to do that. And that's people who participate in a ministry will give more to that ministry. So look for ways to involve people in your work. Number F, people like to feel they are a worthwhile member of a worthwhile group. Look for ways to create community. The most powerful name of a donor affiliated group was the name of that group of the people that we're going to give, that Bill Bright came up with. You know, I'm going to get 1,000 people to give $1 million each. He called that group History's Handful. Ah, that is the best donor group name I've ever heard of. And it was, you know, created in the 70s, you know, maybe we could steal it now. It's
It's a new
the statute of limitations is off of it. I think they still use it. I think Campus Crusade still uses it, but they, you know, like a worthwhile member of a worthwhile group, to be a part of people that are a handful of people that are gonna change history. Wow. Look for ways to create relationships among your donors. We do an annual fundraising dinner in Portland. That is mostly populated by table hosts, people that are willing to kind of say, yeah, I'll host a table, I'll try to fill it with people that I think would have a heart for evangelism that could come and get exposed to the ministry. Before that event, we have a reception just with the hosts. And a lot of these people do it every year. And, you know, it's a time for them to see each other and to connect with each other. And it's like, hey, we're part of kind of this insider group that's helping to get Luis and the team all over the world sharing the good news. We're part of that. We, for the last few years, have done a luncheon in Portland, Oregon in early December. Just has a very kind of, people like to do stuff in December. The city's decorated. There's no technical ask at the event. It's just a time for us to kind of say, hey, here's what's been going on this year. Here's a couple of reports of good ministry. Luis or Andrew will give a little encouraging sort of devotional message from the scriptures. And it's a chance for everybody to see each other. And you're part of this group. You're like kind of part of the insiders group. Now, you know, there's no specific appeal for money, but you've just updated everybody on what's going on, and you've told them kind of where we're headed for next year. And then at that event, we would normally share the dates for our annual Portland fundraiser for the next year. So that's the one thing that we're kind of asking people for. But that event is a great opportunity for donors to be connected with each other. So they like to feel like they're a worthwhile member of a worthwhile group. We have something that we're trying at Palau. I would say it hasn't really gotten traction yet, but we have we do major donor weekends, which you're probably not at a place right now where you could do that, but we get people to come and spend a whole weekend with us where we'll teach the scriptures, we'll report back on the ministry, and we'll share where we're headed and invite people to make a multi-year financial commitment. We've been doing these since about 98. I think I counted up that I've done about 70 of them. That's a lot. But we have a lot of people that have this has been a big part of their lives over the years, and so we're asking them to bring their adult children to those events, to expose them to the ministry. And so we're calling it the LPA Collective. So this is for people like under age of 40, and they have an opportunity to kind of be together with their peers and to get acquainted with this ministry and to kind of grow in relationship with the team and with each other. So that's a worthwhile group that we hope they'll want to participate in. Most people like to be sought out for their opinion. Ask people what they think. I wonder why we don't do this more often. I think one reason is we don't really want to know what they think about us. We're afraid to know what they think. Uh-oh. But I think that is a way to build relationship. And so, like, one question that I like asking that I think is very sort of innocuous, but I think can get to some interesting things is, how do you feel about the communication that you're getting from the Luis Palau Association? And if they're super enthusiastic about it, that's probably a good sign. The communication sort of takes it one step away from like me being from me personally. It's kind of like, well, communication is sort of like a thing, but I think it's a good way to sort of like sort of find out what's really going on. What do they think? Sometimes it might be, is there a part of the world that you'd love to see us doing more ministry in? Or is there a part of the Palau ministry that you think we're doing well in? Is there a part of the Palau ministry that you think we could be doing better in? Having a question like that from time to time when you're dialoguing with people, I think can be very helpful. Number H, people like to give for future plans. The past can support but not drive major financial support. So the action is you need to plan. Once a festival is over, I have found in fundraising, it is over. So if you have this thought in the back of your mind that like once it's over, people will see the fruit and I'll be able to go to them and ask them to fund this deficit that we have, that is not a good game plan. I've tried it. It really is hard. So people like to give for future plans.
What was G? I'm sorry.
G was most like people like to be sought out for their opinion.
Thank you.
John, on that note, I was doing a festival one time, and we still needed a raise. I think it was, I don't know if it was like 50,000 or something. And the chairman of the festival thought everything was going to be okay or whatever. So we had our dinner the last night, before the festival, and he's like, "Well, I think we need this, but I think we'll be okay. Don't worry about it." Like, didn't even do the ask.
Uh-oh.
And so I'm sitting there just sweating it, going like.
Oh no.
Anyway, Lord worked it out, but
Whoa.
I still look back at that like the worst ask ever. Anyway.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
When it's over, it's over.
To
That's
trust.
yeah.
People will tell you they're going to ask, and then when the lights get on,
Yeah, they get-
sometimes they
stage
really
fright.
lock down.
Oh yeah.
It's that
What was that, the past gives
credibility.
credibility?
Yeah, here we go. Past gives credibility, but doesn't motivate current gifts. So, pictures of past festivals, I think, or ministry activity is good. But the focus needs to be on the future. And we're at an interesting time at the Luis Palau Association in this sector, right? Because it's been Luis. Most of the big pictures are the ones with Luis. We have good pictures with Andrew, and Andrew's got like over 10 years of full-time proclamation ministry under his belt. But it's the future plans that are going to drive the fundraising from here on out, not the past victories. We'll show those things, but to expect to just show the past and then that's going to drive significant new money would be a wrong way to look at it. That's why debt and deficits are really difficult. It can be done. I did it at a church where we retired a debt on a building after it had been incurred years later. The trick to that is you have to link it to current benefits. By retiring this debt, that's going to free up more resources for other important, church ministries. But that's a tough road. So focus on the future. J, and this is where the more specific you are, the more believable you are. So share specific stories of real people. This comes back to that question about integrity, E plus I equals 0. E minus I equals 0. Stats have a place, but stories motivate, and details are generally good. Luis always loved the testimonies he got from the UK, because for whatever reason, the people from the UK tend to write with real colorful detail. And so I would encourage you to do the same thing as you share. Point K, In a given population, the distribution of wealth is unequal. Ask people at their level. There's a thing called the myth of the multiples. Myth of the multiples always starts with, if everyone
That's right.
will just give X dollars, then the entire ministry budget will be funded.
Only
Okay.
1,000 people.
So that was the problem with the Bill Bright thing.
Yeah.
There were lots of people that had the ability, that could not give $1 million, but they could have given some very significant other gifts. Well, his strategy didn't, there was no room for that, and I think that was misguided. Or Ralph Winter, who years ago said, if I'm going to get every Christian in America to give $25, then the U.S. Center for World Missions is going to be funded. So if you could have given $10,000, but you got the Ralph Winter ask, you gave $25, right? If everybody gives X, we'll get there. Well, everybody's capacity is different. And so the challenge is to try to ask people at their level. That's where the computer can kind of help you customize your communication. Point L, the more often a donor gives, the more money he or she will give. Action, ask donors for multiple gifts. This is why partner programs are important. Partner programs are a way to encourage and to communicate with people who give on a monthly basis to your ministry. There's only two ways to get more money from an individual. They either give a larger amount in a single gift, or you get them to give more times. And so ask people to give multiple gifts. And many times we will have this thinking that will say, well, they just gave, so let's not ask them. And that's usually a bad idea. The person most likely to give to your ministry is the person that gave most recently to your ministry.
Wow.
There are some exceptions when it comes to major gifts. But even Luke was saying, like that guy that gave $300,000 was saying, I'm not done yet. And it feels good to give. And so don't be afraid to come back to people that have given recently to consider giving again to your ministry. And then, there it is. Existing donors give more than new donors. So work to keep your donors. The key word there is keep. Sometimes we get so busy chasing new donors, we don't take care of the donors we already have, and they leave, and then existing donors tend to not come in at the same level as existing donors. So be careful to keep your existing donors.
John, is that still consistent about 10% every year you lose? You need to kind of think through.
I would kill for losing only 10%. If we have time, we'll dig into it. I have some real live LPA stats in here, and you can see the challenging truth of our ministry. It depends on kind of how you acquired those donors. Like media donors, like radio ministries, they would lose about 90% of their donors every year.
Wow.
And,
90%.
but like people that you've personally cultivated, like Karen did, to build a personal support team that you've personally nurtured and are growing, that those donors, I think, more like a 90%. And it would be 90% with major donors. you would expect to keep about 9 out of 10. Every year would be a good ministry norm for that. So people who give consistently give more than those who give sporadically. That's, again, where I come back to the partner program and encourage regular giving. Have a partner program. I love to enlist people who would commit to give to the ministry on a monthly basis. And then once they've made that commitment, then you would like for them to convert them to giving electronically. I don't know if there's electronic options internationally or not, via wire or whatever that are reasonably priced. That could be done very inexpensively here in this country, and there's a lot of people that have an intention of giving every month, but life gets busy, they get sidetracked, they might only give 9 or 10 gifts a year, whereas if you move them to electronic, you're guaranteed to get 12 gifts a year. And there might be a couple of times throughout the course of the year where you'd invite them to give other special gifts.
We use PushPay.
Yeah.
PushPay, even though we're small and only the pastors and elders, or pastors and ministers give, that's what made us self-sustaining within 2 months of the plant. Is going to PushPay, and we have a video. They did a video for us, and literally it's the numbers they'll give you, like 77977. Text message the word purpose to 77977. That's literally what you do. And if you guys do that right now, go ahead and do it. Look, I encourage you, go ahead and do it. What'll happen is you'll get an app sent to your phone where you can give one time or you can sign up to give multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
But it made the difference. It made it because the pastors, it's not that they weren't tithing, but this came up when I got paid, and this came up. But with PushPay, they literally just tap a button right after they get paid, and it goes right in.
Mm-hmm.
And you as the pastor, whoever, can get the emails directly when money hits, not hits the bank account, but hits PushPay to be deposited. It's a huge. So
That's cool.
Yeah.
Our church uses that also, PushPay. So that's a good
What's the difference
facilitator.
between PushPay and PayPal?
big
PayPal is that's used. I mean that can do gift processing, but
I have no
PushPay
problem.
is its own little application. It's sort of designed for this sort of thing, and it's super user friendly.
It takes 3 minutes to set up the
Yeah.
first time, and then you can either download the app to your cell phone, or you can do it every time. But it's literally, and they give you can pick your numbers usually, but they give you an easy to remember number, and that's what I told you was literally, if you text it in, it comes right to you, and it makes it so easy for people to give.
Yep, you want to make it easy. People who give to more than one program or cause within an organization will give more and give longer to the organization, and they will probably give more to each cause. So this was kind of borne out during our time at Campus Crusade, when you'd have people that would give to supported staff, but if they gave to an individual staff member and they also gave to a project, they tended to give more to both entities. So get people or invite people to give to multiple things within your organization. If they just do scholarships, ask them to bridge over to do campaigns and scholarships. And those will tend to be people that will stay with you longer and give more. People expect to be thanked for their contributions. Say thank you. And I'm a real believer in doing that many times, many ways, and that's what I feel like we're accountable for. People want to know that you got the gift. They want to know that you're using it for what they intended for it to be used for, and then there's other ways you can build relationships by reporting back. So, Q?
John,
Yes.
with the thank yous,
Yeah.
we were trending obviously in a very different era. with emails, texts, all of that. Is there a preferred, my thinking is still a handwritten note, because
Yeah.
it's becoming so rare as a thank you, but is there anything related to thank yous that are,
Yes,
better
we're
than
gonna
the
talk
other
about it.
ones?
I've got some
Okay,
muscle on that
All
one
right.
we're gonna get to at the next session, so
Okay.
that's good. Though we do need to talk about the electronic kind of like dimension to all that, so we'll talk about it. But I'm a big fan of many times, many ways, and not necessarily always just one person. Q, if people only hear from us when we need money, they are less likely to respond. So communicate with donors in many ways and in many times. We want to try to inspire people, inform people, and solicit people. And so there's a little tool that I have in the book that we'll look at together that I think could be helpful in helping you assess that. But we need to be communicating more than just when we need money.
The question back
Yes.
there. When you thank people or communicate with people, do you just send, I'm just asking you, do you send with the bulk, or do you individually thank them, or?
I'll talk about the whole thank you process a lot, but we thank every single gift, I think of $5 or more that comes into LPA. I think we don't send a thank you if it's under $5. And we book those gifts every day, and we get a thank you letter out the door within 48 hours. And then there's other things that we do on top of that, like since we're in Eastern time, it isn't there yet probably, but every single day, and this precedes me at Palau, an email is sent out to a handful of LPA leaders, Luis being one of them, that has a report that shows how much came in today, how much has come in this month, how much came in year to date, how much came in last year to date, how much came in last year this month, how many gifts came in today, how many gifts we've gotten this month, how many gifts we have for the year, and compare that to last year. And we calculate the average gift as well. That's on one page. That's one little document. I'll hit click. I'll look at that. Karen can verify. I said it last night. I said, ooh, big day yesterday. Something good happened. Then that report is the summary, and then on the other report, every single gift. Name, project, amount, appeal code, which is sort of like what prompted the gift. And actually, for whatever reason, we have the source of the name, where we got the name originally. Fascinating to study that.
You do that every day?
That report comes every day. So, and it was Luis, I'm sure, that asked for that report. It was way before my time, and I've never changed it. I've never touched it. And it is funky, like the way it comes out, but because we've all used it for 26 years, our minds just kind of know where to look, like, right, to get to the gifts. It's sorted in an unusual way, but it's just the way we've always done it. And, so that report goes to Kevin, Luis, Andrew, myself, all the field reps. And so, let's say a large gift arrived yesterday. System thank you is going to go out with a little, the thing that says, and we'll talk about this, and a thank you letter from Kevin Palau. But any of those people know about the gift, and so they might text the person, hey, wow, thank you so much, I saw your gift arrive today. what a blessing. I might send an email, or hopefully like the rep or I are going to pick up the phone and call the person and say, wow, that was awesome, thank you. So they're getting thanked, the system thank you and letter, emails, texts, phone calls, and it might be from a lot of different people. I think it's all good. I don't think that's going to communicate bad stuff to a donor if they get thanked many times in many ways. And the handwritten note is kind of the gold standard, I think, still. I mean, because no one does it anymore. So well-written handwritten notes are awesome. %80 of the money comes from 20% of the donors. Be a good steward of your time. And at Palau, it's more like 90% comes from 10% of the donors. So, if you only have an hour to spend with a donor today, probably ought to focus on those people that are given 90% of your support. And then finally, deadlines move people to action. So if you have a deadline, use it. Urgency is a major principle of success in fundraising. So we don't invent things that aren't real, but if we have legitimate, real deadlines, we should use them. All right, break time. Let's take a 10-minute break. I have it, my watch says it's 10 minutes till 2. Is that long enough for a break, 10 minutes? All right, stretch your legs, fresh air. Is it just me or did it warm up in here? I'm ready to take my jacket off now.
We got the heater going.
Forward here. So you're going to have to page through and get to a thing that says face-to-face with major donors and foundations. Sorry to throw a curveball there.
What is it?
It's called Face-to-Face with Major Donors and Foundations. And I wanted to start by just showing a case study here of a donor. It looks like this. Keep going. There you go. She's got it. One more page. All right. So we're going to talk about, I'm going to blaze through kind of what we do at Palau, just to give you some context. But mostly I just want to talk about who they are and how to communicate with them. So this is like, I'm telling you what to do, but I'm trying to tell you how to do it too. Okay? So, but it's amazing to me, kind of the things that are out there to try to inspire people in generosity. And there's a conference called Generous Giving that goes on where they try to expose wealthy American Christians to principles of biblical generosity. We've been the beneficiary of that. There was a guy who went to that from the Portland area, very successful guy. Could have just sort of, his business was going pretty well, kind of almost without him in the mix. And he could have just gone to Palm Desert and played golf. And he went to a Generous Giving conference, and the light bulb turned on for him. And he realized, I'm gifted to operate in the marketplace and to make money, so I can flow that money to build the kingdom. He got it. The light bulb turned on. That's a good website. GenerousGiving.org is the name of the group, and there are a lot of very profound, like little videos that profile donors and kind of how they're learning and growing and experiencing giving. So well, I praise God that that group is out there. We've been the beneficiary of it, and may their tribe increase. May they be inspiring more and more marketplace people to give generously to the kingdom. This is another website called gospelpatrons.org, and that's also the title of a book. Patrons, Patrons, Gospel Patrons.
.org.
.org, I believe. And it's a good book. I wouldn't say it was a life-changing book for me. It talks about people throughout history who God raised up to fund important kingdom things. Like going all the way back to like William Tyndale. You know, somebody had to like put him he kind of hide him in a room in London and pay for his expenses so he could do the first like English translation of the Bible. A guy funded that. And that term is called a patron. Man, Charles Dickens again, twice in one day, but was it Great Expectations that there was a guy who was a patron, you know, and I was like, what is that? Or a benefactor. You know, he had made money and he wanted to deploy his money to stuff that he valued and cared about. These people are still out there today. And this is a modern example. And so I wanted to show this video to you just to kind of get your mind thinking a little bit about who are these people and what makes them tick. And there's all kinds of types. This is just one. But I thought this was worth sharing. If it goes. It'll count if it goes.
Come on.
Should I try to... Oh, I saw his arm move. Uh-oh.
Is from Corrie ten Boom, and she says that faith is the fantastic adventure in trusting Him. And for me, this fantastic adventure has meant following God in places that I didn't expect.
There was a mentor in our church who really challenged us when we were early on in our marriage journey. And he looked at us and he said, one of the reasons that God's brought you together is that you work together better as a team. God has a mission that is the perfect blend of your two talents and gifts and passions. He looked at us and said, what's your mission? When I came to college, I met up with a group of guys who wrote software for the Mac, and Apple happened to be in town at my university. And they said, yeah, do you want to just try doing an interview slot just for practice? I mean, you're a freshman, so you're not going to get a spot, but just as practice.
And I remember this internship was a long shot. Like, this was not really happening.
And about 4 months later, I got a call from Apple saying, hey, do you want an internship at Apple? And I remember calling my now wife, Leslie, and being like,
I'm going to California. And I remember just thinking, all right, I thought this was our time to be together. But God is so clearly calling you. There is no other reason except Him that you are going. So I'm going to trust this.
I was long distance from Leslie during my summer internships, and so I would call her and we would talk for an hour a day. I was walking back into the building and I was still on the phone with Leslie. honestly, and someone was coming out, and my brain just subconsciously told me, there's someone that you recognize, you should say hello. And so I just kind of like what up to the person as I'm on the phone, and I realized then it was Steve Jobs. And Steve kind of just stops and looks at me like, did you just what up me? And he just shakes his head and smiles and just walks right by me. And that was my first interaction with Steve Jobs.
Kevin fit right in from day one. Kevin was someone who grappled with problems so effectively that a lot of the engineers started to see that the things he was working on were actually real, they were concrete, they were actually coming to fruition. I think Kevin's beliefs and values are patently obvious in everything he does. Kevin has an unbridled sense of enthusiasm, and that has not changed since day one till now.
In my first internship with Apple, there was 4 of us in an apartment, kind of corporate housing, and I remember at some point in the summer we were, hanging out and talking, and the concept of Christianity came up, or the idea of Christianity came up, and I'm like, oh, I'm a Christian. And one of the guys just looks at me and he's like, why? And I couldn't answer the question. I didn't know. When I got to California and realized I didn't even have what I thought I knew as the answers, I had a bit of an identity crisis. Who I thought I was started to fade away and slip out of my control.
Ever since Kevin came home from his internship, he was starting to really wrestle with, why do I believe what I believe? Both of us had grown up in Christian homes and Christian communities where it was just sort of, this is what we do. Kevin had never really questioned the why behind his beliefs. And so we began to process these ideas together and talk about what it meant to trust God instead of trusting ourselves.
Kind of for me started a journey of really trying to understand what do Christians believe, and then do I actually believe that? Who is this Jesus? Who is he really? And do I believe what he stands for? What I had come to believe is that Christianity was about following a set of rules, and if you follow a set of rules, like an achiever personality, you get rewarded. What I found was so much better. I found that what Christ was grace. Grace is giving you something when you don't deserve it. And so Christ both gave me mercy and grace. And when I first learned about that, it just blew my mind.
We got married that next winter, and then the very next day got on an airplane and landed in San Jose. Once we were married and we headed off to California, Kevin had really encouraged me to take a season and to figure out what this new life here was going to be and what I felt God was calling me to. And so I wasn't quite sure what that was going to look like, but I knew that I needed to be in God's Word. And so I joined Bible Study Fellowship. And I would sit every morning and I would do my study, and I would read Ephesians and Corinthians and Hebrews, and I was struck with the fact that
Ugandans are used to this.
You're used to this?
the gospel was meant to be shared. I had lived most of my life. I don't think I would have been able to clearly put the gospel in words if someone had asked me. It was just almost assumed. And for the first time in my life, that Christ died on the cross for my sins took a whole new meaning. And as I read these letters, I realized this was something that was not just meant for me. This was something that God passionately wants others to know.
We joined a church plant. And one day our pastor gets up and says, we are going to start having a partnership with a church in Dubai. And Leslie and I, we both just felt this sense of God is laying something on my heart, and we have to go.
Just knew we had to go to Dubai. I couldn't explain it. I'm not an adventurous person, so the idea of getting on an airplane to the Middle East was not on the top of my list. And yet I could not shake that feeling. And so we reached out to our pastor and we said, hey, you mentioned this. We both can't explain this, but we think we need to go.
Patience.
Is the key. That's what we're missing.
Evangelists aren't patient.
Who said that this morning?
Me.
Oh, Joey.
I think it might, maybe it's gonna like
Impatience.
buffer a little bit, so I'll talk, and then maybe we'll come back for the second half.
Yeah.
Okay, is that all right?
That's good.
Maybe that'll help. Let me tell you a little bit about what, or show you something. If you flip like 4 pages back into this book, you're going to see a little chart that looks like this. Go from the outline. Some of you landed on a different one. This one's called Giving Level Frequency Report. So that's not it. That's not it. If you start at the outline where we were and go backward into the book, not forward, but backward, you'll find it. Man, good. You're getting close. Keep going. One more, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. No, you're almost there. You're right. Frequency 2018, right?
Yeah, Giving Level Frequency 2018. She's got it. You can look on together. Yep, you got it. So this is real live data on the Luis Palau Association in 2018. So to understand this report, the third column says range of annual giving. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
That is those donors giving for the entire year. So we had 11 donors that gave less than $4.99. Okay, that's column 4, total number of donors. The next group gave between $5 and $9.99, 10 to 24, 25 to 49, 50 to 99, 100 to 200, $200 to 300, 300 to 600, 600 to 1,000, 1,000 to 2,000. Are you following this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The first column is the total dollars amount given for that entire line. So look at line 14. People that gave $10,000 or more to LPA. We had 272 people do that. That's 6.44% of the total amount of our donors, because we had 4,221 donors for the year. But the dollar amount was $11,114,000. 81.72% of all of our money came from 6.44% of our donors. Is that good or bad?
It is what
Good
it
to
is.
know.
It is what it is.
Well, it helps you
And it's
spend,
good to know.
it helps you spend more time on those people.
Yeah. It is. That's the best answer. It is what it is. It's not necessarily good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
All things being equal, I would like to have a even broader base of support at Palau. But Palau has been blessed, I would say, by a lot of wonderful relationships that go back a long ways. And we've invested the majority of our fundraising energy around this work with these major donors. So we kind of count major donors at the Luis Palau Association as people who have the ability to give $5,000 or more to LPA in a year. That's very subjective, right? Because I don't really know what any of you can give. So I'm estimating it based on your past giving, what I know about what you do for a living, the level of, like, the house that you live in, you know, whatever I can find, that's how I'm basing that. And so if you added that line together, that would add another 159 to the 272, so that would be about 425 roughly, about 10% of our people giving about 88% of our income. And so for these people, primarily the category that give $10,000 or more a year, we try to visit those people face to face 4 times a year.
The 272, 4 times a year.
4 times a year. I was waiting for a good reaction because that can kind of seem like a lot. Does it seem like a lot?
Now, when you say visit, I mean, you're not necessarily in their home or in their city, but you're with them somewhere?
We'll take it wherever we can get it, but usually that means going to their city.
So it's not coming to...
It could be. That could be. That could be. That's like super cool if they'll come to something, and we're going to work hard to try to make that happen. But we do that at Palau. Again, this is just context. I'm not suggesting that this is going to be where you guys are going to move quickly to. Okay, this is what happened over the Luis Palau Association for 88, 98, 08, 40. We've been around for 41 years as a separate ministry, and Luis was with Overseas Crusades for what? I don't know, say 15 years before that. This took almost 60 years to get to where we are. But we have people on our staff who do nothing but visit with major donors.
How many people is that, John?
Good question. I should know that. I do it, and I have a territory. In fact, this will help me. Imagine I could project that on the whole screen there. The blue is John Ogle's territory, the lighter blue. That's weird territory. Center cut of the United States, Michigan, kind of New England and Maine, okay. Keith Palau is sort of the mustard color. Northern Cal, Bay Area, Texas, Illinois, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and he's actually doing Colorado now. That weird blue mark is me writing the word Keith on there as a note to self. Okay, that's Keith. Bob Lockwood is full-time, and he does the red zone, so mostly the Pacific Northwest, Arizona, and Nevada. Green is Chip Walters. He lives in the Twin Cities and works with people there. And the orange is Ray Spencer, the Southeast. And then the dark blue is Brooke Andrews, and that's actually wrong. Bob's doing Alaska, not Brooke. So Brooke's just doing Southern California, where there's a good number of major donors, and she's doing it part-time.
Where are your major donors mostly from? No, I mean, like a region or a state. Is there a concentration?
Yeah, well, that's kind of, there's some parts of this map that aren't colored in. Those are states where we have almost no major donors or very few, okay? But where the Luis Palau Association has donors is probably going to be similar to your story, it's going to be, where are you from? Okay, first of all, where do you live? So this applies whether you're in India or in Portland, Oregon. You know, Luis and Pat were from Portland, Oregon. When Luis came to the States, he came at the invitation of a pastor in the Bay Area. And he began speaking in lots of churches in the Bay Area. One of the reasons why I think I wanted to share this guy's story with you is Luis was speaking in churches in the Bay Area in the early 1960s. Somewhere around the late 60s, someone said, "This is Silicon Valley." Okay, there were lots of engineering firms being born in the Bay Area. A lot of those people went to the churches that Luis spoke at. Luis made friends with these people. They started supporting the team at $25 a month. Some of them were like some of the earliest employees at Hewlett-Packard and Intel and places like that. And their careers went up and their ability to continue to support LPA went up. So where are our donors mostly concentrated? Where we live, one, Portland is our #1 city. It wasn't always that, but when we started to do ministry in our own city, that's when it really amped up. Then it's where we've been invited to do U.S. campaigns. So any place where we get invited to do a campaign, there's a local fundraising effort, and we make friends in those places. So in general, the states with the most Christian money in the USA would be California, Florida, Texas, maybe Chicago, Illinois, Wheaton, that area. The Twin Cities in Minneapolis. Those would be kind of hotbeds of Christian evangelical money. That money is all over the place, but those would be some places where it is particularly. And so each of our major donor representatives has approximately 80 families that they build relationships with. And they go try to visit these people 4 times a year. And they try to get into their lives and discover their dream and show them how the Palau ministry aligns with their dream and challenge them to invest now in the ministry. So that's how we do what we do. So let's try to watch the second half of this. I want to comment on this a little bit, and then we'll talk about some more specifics. Let's see what happens. Maybe we'll do better. Maybe not. Didn't go very far. This is Dubai.
Go and love this church, to meet the pastor and his wife, their family, to worship with a congregation of 60 different national.
Well, I think this might
keep glitching, don't you think? Yeah.
Nationalities who all come together.
Tell you what,
are
I'm
the
gonna,
divine.
I'll freeze it and we'll maybe come back to it at the end here.